Graham, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, so things are kind of crazy right now. Everything's, we're in this crazy bull market. I just landed literally just now in El Salvador, and I'm here now for some Bitcoin conferences. And obviously, we're going to be talking about Lightning, and I'm sure you've got lots of things to add. So, just for people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the Lightning Network?
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you're there. I wish I could be in El Salvador as well, but not able to make it, unfortunately. But yeah, so for me personally, so I've been in Bitcoin for a long time. Kind of one of those, I wouldn't say early adopters, but been around it for a long time. Always kind of kept it as a hobby, but always had normie jobs along the way. And It was the start of late 2018. I really wanted to get more and more involved into Bitcoin and the general ecosystem, and I was really kind of looking at, all right, like what's next on the path? What's next for Bitcoin in general? And obviously, it was the Lightning Network. It was still very early, but that was what everyone was kind of promising is going to be this new mecca for Bitcoin that's going to bring all this adoption and all of these people along the way. So I started to look at it. The earliest, like, Lightning Network in 2018 really wasn't. I had some problems with it, mainly just like on like usability and things like that, which was kind of me having not very good foresight into what it could be, right? Like, what are all of these like improvements and things going on to happen with it? So I kind of like said, yeah, that's cool. Maybe I'll check on it a little bit later. Kind of just kept going, doing hacking on random things, and then at the beginning of 2020, I kind of came back to it again, and that's where I saw huge progress in terms of implementations, the protocol, like functionality. All of these things really started to get fleshed out more, and all of the things that I didn't like about it were basically non-existent anymore. And I started to look at it as a very serious thing that is going to be able to scale Bitcoin to the world. And so that's where I started to say, okay, this is probably the time to start getting more serious about this and look at where some opportunities in the space. And that's where I started to play around with LND and some of the other implementations, and kind of found it really still difficult to work with on the operation side. The protocol was working if you knew what you were doing, but there's still a lot of operational overhead to it. And so that's where I found I think there's a big opportunity to help people in this area, and that's why I started Voltage.
Yeah, right. And so some of those problems you mentioned that in the maybe earlier days it was a little harder to get started with your Lightning node, or perhaps to route that payment, or perhaps a larger payment. So small 10 sat, 150 sat payments would go through easily, but let's say once you started to try in the early days, if you were trying $100 or a few $100, then you started to get some issues, right? So what were some of the problems you saw in the early days versus what we see now?
Yeah, it's things like that, but then it was also like before things like KeySend and whatnot, you couldn't ever send a payment without needing an invoice first. So if I want to give my brother $10 on the Lightning Network for his birthday, I have to go say, hey, can you generate me an invoice first? And then he'll give me an invoice and I'll pay it. That's kind of silly, right? So that was a big like UX problem for me that ultimately got solved. It's just one of those things that just took time to actually develop it out and how it would actually work. So that's another example of just some of those early things, along with routing and all the more protocol level things. But there's some clunkiness in the UX, which has come a long way in terms of that. And like things with multipath payments, where you can split up a payment amongst many routes, helps deliverability immensely. So a lot of those kind of weird, quirky UX things were what I wasn't excited. I don't want to say I wasn't excited about, but it was just one of those things that I knew that had to be fixed before anyone would really start using it. And a lot of those things are at least fixed, or there's at least plans on fixing them. Like we have like a pretty good idea on how we're gonna attack that one problem.
Excellent. And so it's really just been this whole journey of each different problem. Some entrepreneur has come out, or some developer has come out to try to fix that. And so I think that is where this whole idea of having nodes that are easier to run for the less super technical, less tech savvy, perhaps, although still somewhat tech savvy, but just not at that level, this idea came from. And I think that's perhaps part of what you're doing as well with Voltage. So do you want to just start and tell us a little bit about what Voltage is and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, for sure. So Voltage is a Bitcoin infrastructure provider. So what we do is we host Bitcoin nodes and Lightning nodes. We also host things like BTCPay server, Thunder Hub, some of these other auxiliary tools around Lightning Network and Bitcoin as well. But really, kind of our cornerstone product is Lightning Network node hosting. So through our platform, you're able to sign up and provision a Lightning node for yourself in about 2 minutes. It's up and running, ready to go very, very quickly. And you basically don't have to manage any of the underlying tech stack with the node. You don't have to worry about the networking or the backups or how are you gonna, find your peers. All of those things are pretty well handled for you. And so you're able to get up to speed much faster with very little overhead. Kind of going back to the reason I started it was when I first started looking at the Light Network, running those was super hard. They would crash all the time. Figuring out how do you get connectivity out to the network when you're running at home compared to in the cloud, compared to all these other things, and what's best practices. How do you make sure your funds are safe? It was super overwhelming. It was super difficult. So that's why I started Voltage, is to make a really easy platform for people to just come online, click a few buttons, and have a Lightning node up and running. And that's what we have today. And we've also expanded it to be more business centric as well. So there's a lot of larger companies that really don't either have the technical expertise to know all of the ins and outs of Lightning, or don't want to hire out a team dedicated for that. So we take on a lot of that burden for them. It's still their node at the end of the day, but we're able to abstract a lot of the complexities out for them. So just making it really, really easy for people to use Lightning is really our objective here.
Gotcha. And so, as an example, then you might be a merchant looking to set up a BTCPay, and then so this is one way to do that. Now, as an example, let's say I want to be a merchant. I'm maybe not super tech savvy, but I'm interested to set up my BTCPay. And so, as an example, historically, that merchant might have had to purchase like an out-of-the-box solution, like as in like a physical box to do it with, like say the Nodl, or run it off their own node, or have technical competence, or perhaps they might have used, let's say, the Luna node web deploy. That's kind of historically what they might have done. What would that look like now if they were to try to do that now with Voltage?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what's kind of different about Voltage is we kind of handhold you in a lot of the setup as well. So when you do like a Luna node deployment, you're still kind of like on your own. Once it's deployed, it's like, all right, you go deal with it. We help you with the setup a little bit more, and then we manage like the Bitcoin node and those things on the back end. We do the updates for you. We make sure it's all like running and smooth for you. So it's a much more hands-off experience for you, the customer. And so we're able to really help you get up and running faster. And then we also help. We have a great support team that can help you with any questions you have about integrating, or how do you access your funds, because with our BTCPay server, we don't have access to your funds. It's non-custodial, and that we just know the pub key and be able to generate addresses for you, but your private keys are your own private keys. So being able to help customers figure out the ins and outs of integrating BTCPay server. And then how do they also just kind of manage the funds and manage connecting it into your whatever workflows you have for accepting payments.
I see. And in the hosted node environment, right, so this idea is a hosted node service, what's the normal way, like, is the customer having to use terminal and SSH into that, or is it more like there's a web dashboard? Could you just tell us, what does it look like? What can they expect to see?
Yeah, so we have our own dashboard that helps you manage the node. So stopping, starting, updating, adjusting your settings, all of those kinds of checking logs, all of those things. We have a dashboard to help make management really easy on you. And then when you want to connect into your node or actually use it, we expose the APIs for the node directly to you. So you're able to connect in from any wallet or any application. So Thunder Hub, Zeus, Zap, you name any of them. You're able to connect as long as it supports LND right now. We're working on adding other implementations, but right now it's just LND. And so you really have complete access as if it was running on your own hardware. And you're able to just connect anything up to it. You can connect your own applications as well for integrating. And then even taking it a step further, something that's unique to our platform is we have webhooks on our platform. So we're able to notify you when your node has an update or when when it got restarted, so it can automatically unlock itself. So we have a few unique pieces to our platform as well. We also have IP restrictions, so you can set which IP addresses are allowed to talk to your node. So we've done a lot around security to make sure that it's as robust as it can be for running a node in the cloud.
Gotcha. And can you give us an idea, what kind of cost can we expect to see? Maybe give us a low end and a high end range that we could be talking about here to run a hosted node.
Yeah, for sure. So our nodes start at $10 a month. Those are very obviously just kind of individual focused. So they're backed by Neutrino. So they're very kind of light. They're called a light node. And so those start at $10 a month, and they can go up to we have a professional node tier, which is a little bit more custom built for a business's needs and exactly kind of what they need in terms of transactions per second and uptime and all of these things. And those can get into hundreds of dollars a month. But overall, it's generally very affordable, especially when you think about if you're just if you want to start playing around with a Lightning node, instead of spending $500 on an at-home node, you want to just kind of try out how do I even using a Lightning node first. It's a very, very entry-level pricing to just try it out, and then, run it for a while. And if you ever want to switch and go run a node in your home, you can do that. That's fine. So very, very approachable pricing is what we're really aiming to create here.
I see. And one of the, I guess, historical things people had to think about when they were doing a hosted node was the hard drive space requirement for that VPS if they're doing a hosted node. Because historically, and I think this is why many people opted for a pruned node setup, because the full blockchain, if you were to download that today, as we speak in November 2021, it's something like 430 gigabytes, something in that range. And so that's quite an expensive cost for somebody who's running that on a VPS. And so I guess that's where this kind of trade-off of having a pruned node and running a neutrino style. Could you outline a little bit of your thoughts around that? What's that range there in terms of hard drive space for, the pruned user versus the, let's say, the full blockchain history user?
Yeah, for sure. And even we even have nodes that are the standard nodes that connect into a full Bitcoin node. But we have a really advanced proprietary backend in how we run our Bitcoin nodes. So even when you're running with a full Bitcoin node, those are $32 a month compared to if you were running a full Bitcoin node with Lightning node on your own hardware in the cloud or something, it'd probably be $150 a month. So we're able to really abstract that cost away from one user, and so it's we're really aiming to create a very robust platform that's also very cost effective, especially when you're comparing to doing a similar thing yourself. It could still be when you're just running a Bitcoin node with a Lightning node or something, like you said, it can even with the prune node, it could be $50 a month.
I see, yeah, and so then that also raises interesting questions as well. And of course, I understand it's a business, you have customers, you're trying to make it easy for them. But I guess it also raises that question around what level of trust. And of course, it's choose your own level, right? You can pay the cheaper level and maybe you're placing a little bit more trust in Voltage, the company, to serve you the correct Bitcoin blockchain and not feed you, let's say, false blocks or false data, versus obviously paying more. And you now have, I would say, stronger assurances that, yeah, you're really downloading the full Bitcoin blockchain, right?
Yeah, for sure. There is a trust trade-off with using any kind of hosted setup. So that absolutely exists. And I think it's just a matter of kind of what your own assurances are. I mean, even when you're running nodes at home, you do have to do a little bit of trusting that the code that you're running on your device wasn't tampered in the middle, and verifying all of the code yourself, all those things. So there's a little bit of a trust there. Doing something on our platform is, like you said, maybe even a little bit of a step further, but it's even a step down from using a fully custodial provider. So there's always a spectrum of trust involved, and we're definitely I would say somewhere in the middle of that trust spectrum. And so yeah. It still we still give you are in control of your funds and your node and all of these things, but there is kind of always inherently a level of trust involved with these things.
Of course, yeah. And in fairness, that merchant, let's say they're a totally new merchant, they're thinking in their mind, well, should I go to the likes of open node as an example, right? And that would be more like a custodial Lightning solution. And I'm not, of course, not attacking open node. I think, they're great. And it's kind of that spectrum of what are the options there. And I suppose what you're trying to offer then is something in between, that you're kind of not quite the crazy, fully self-sovereign person, but you're kind of somewhere in between and not as custodial, I suppose. So I'm curious as well, for that user who is, let's say they're new, they haven't really learned all the aspects of Lightning, channel management, managing the fees, all of this. How does it work if they want to spin up a Lightning node with you guys in terms of channel management and all these things? Do they still do that themselves, or is there some kind of automatic method there in the background?
Yeah, for sure. So today it's been their responsibility to manage channels and do all those things. We provide a lot of kind of tools to make it easier. So we host like Thunder Hub to make getting into your dashboard easier, where you don't have to necessarily download an application to connect in or something. It's all native to the platform. So we have been trying to make it easier, but today it has been like the user's responsibility. That said, that we just released a few weeks ago a product called Flow, which is we will probably get into later, but it's a liquidity management solution. It's a thing to help you get channels, and so we're working on integrating that into the platform. So when you create a node, you automatically get a channel provision for your node. Same thing with being able to use our Flow UI to just kind of select your node, say, hey, how big of a channel do you want, and just have it automatically provision a channel to your node. So those things are getting easier, and we're working on a lot of solutions to make it easier and easier. We want to abstract a lot of these. It's a very tight rope to walk of managing everything for the user, but then also not having full control of their node. We don't want to. The nodes that we run on our platform, we don't have any visibility into them. They're basically black boxes to us. We don't know what their channels are, where their peers are, what funds they have on the node. We don't know anything about it, which is very intentional for us. We want it to be completely in the user's control, and we don't have ability to spy on them or anything like that. So it's a very tightrope to walk to have that as an offering, but then also help them with the onboarding, all of these things. So it's something we're working on, of still maintaining that level of security and privacy, but also helping them onboard easier and maintain their channels and all of this stuff easier than just saying, hey, you got to deal with it yourself.
I see. Yeah. So it also does remind me of the conversation even in the earlier days around LND autopilot. So that was, so people who aren't familiar, LND autopilot would basically try to find nodes, and it was kind of like a basic idea, but I think it seems that maybe the community, at least for now, is not really relying on that kind of approach. The approach now is sort of more like you try to find manually good partners to peer with and open your channels with. And so then if you are a merchant trying to run your own Lightning node, part of that learning journey is going to be figuring out who do you open a channel with and how do you try to get some inbound liquidity, because obviously as a merchant you want to sell, people need to be able to pay you. In order for that, you need inbound liquidity. So I guess that's just an interesting development. So do you have any thoughts on LND autopilot, or I believe Z-Man had a similar idea. I think it's called CL Boss, or any of those related ideas?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think those are good ideas. I think autopilot was just, I think there's just still more development to do on it to make it kind of production ready. I think that it would, I think it would just make bad decisions. I don't think that there's just enough in kind of the decision engine to do well. I haven't looked at many of the other ones, but I think generally speaking, it's a good idea, and that's an end state that we will get to where channel management isn't something that you really need to worry about. It'll be for the most part handled for you. So I think that we'll get to that state. It's just a matter of enough engineers to go solve all of those problems.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I think. And this reminds me of the panel we were on together at TabConf, where Bosworth's answer on this question was actually more like specialization. So his answer was more like, look, you might actually just there might be routing node services, or LSP, Lightning Service Providers, and you, the merchant user who's maybe not super technical or super into Lightning, you just want to use Lightning, you might just peer with that routing node operator. You might just open a channel with them and do it that way. So I think maybe that's
Yeah.
And then you're putting it on them to be a specialist in knowing, okay, who do I open the channel with? How do I manage my channels? How do I manage my incoming liquidity versus my outbound? How do I balance those channels? All of these kinds of questions, managing my fee rate, etc.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that there's a lot of developments in that area, like trampoline routing and things like that, that are really interesting. To where I think it's gonna be. I'm really interested to see how it plays out. I think there's a lot of different ways that we could approach this problem, and I think that that's a great idea of kind of having there's a lot of, say there's 10 LSP providers that all do kind of that of handling routing for you, and you can maybe connect to 2 or 3 of them, and then that's all you have to do is just connect into these services that are essentially doing the routing for you in a way. So I think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm really interested to see how it plays out over time.
I see, yeah. And so I know, as you mentioned, you're working with LND, using LND under the hood. Now, I know Lightning Labs they've got their products Loop, and so the idea, just for listeners who aren't familiar, you can swap in and out of on-chain or on-chain using the Loop server. So is this something you would look at doing, or is it something more like you would actually have almost like a competing service, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, we would. We have no plans to do kind of any kind of competing service for that right now. I think that we're looking into enabling our customers to use Loop more. So our customers can use Loop today. They just have to run like the Loop daemon or the Lightning terminal or something like themselves on their computer and just point it at their voltage node. So they can use it today, but we're working on adding like the Lightning terminal onto the voltage platform like natively really soon. So once that's there, they'll be able to use Loop, Pool, all of these services just kind of natively on voltage. So we're definitely looking on enabling a lot of those features, features as we go. And just being able to tie into the greater, Lightning ecosystem, and being able to leverage a lot of those tools much easier than having to like run them yourself, or figure out a way to do like these loop ins and loop outs in some other way.
Gotcha. Yeah, because for some merchants it's like it's enough to do their normal business, then to also go and learn all the Lightning Bitcoin stuff, unless they're like very committed to it themselves. It's a big ask, so I can certainly understand that. So what's your journey been like supporting Bitcoin businesses or people who want to spin up hosted nodes? Like, have you got any things to share in terms of not obviously doxing particular customers or whatever, but just obviously more like themes or things you're getting out of working with them?
Yeah, I mean it's been a really fun time, honestly. I mean, working with like a lot of Bitcoiners, because that's kind of to date. A lot of our customers have been people that are like in the Bitcoin space, already knowledgeable about Bitcoin, and they will kind of want to take it to the next level with Lightning. They want to do this, the new fancy way of doing payments with Bitcoin through the Lightning Network. So it's been really great working with customers that are already Bitcoin knowledgeable and really just want to take it to the next level with Lightning. And so it's just been great working with those people. But now we're starting to see kind of this new wave of people that don't have a lot of Bitcoin knowledge, that are just that just kind of know about it at a very, very high level, but haven't really used it in any serious way yet. And so those are people in like Central America with like the new El Salvador law and things like that are saying, hey, we need to start figuring out how are we going to like incorporate Bitcoin into our business. Like it's like a very real thing, and it's very obvious that we need to start looking at this. We have no idea how. And so being able to help them along their journeys, a very different one than people that are already in Bitcoin, but it's a very fun one as well, where we're kind of helping these people that are starting kind of from ground zero almost, and teaching them how to get onto Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. And what's really cool for me personally is one of the things that I see as we see Bitcoin evolving is I think more and more people are going to be onboarded to Bitcoin through the Lightning Network. And then like the base layer, like layer 1, is just this kind of thing that is this like lower level detail that you probably don't need to know much about. You're just going to hang out in Lightning all the time. And that's kind of like becoming true, where a lot of people are onboarding into Bitcoin through the Lightning Network and then learning about like the base layer and all these other things later on. And so I think that that's going to just continue to happen more and more, where Lightning Network is our entry point, and then learning more about the base layer and how that all works is an afterthought almost.
Yeah, I see. And as a relatively young business, Voltage is probably the first onion layer is the more hardcore committed Bitcoin and Lightning users. And then obviously as you grow and over time, you'll start to have more and more newbie users who are like totally new and like, oh, what's this Lightning thing? What's a channel? I guess you'll start to have that, and then maybe you'll have to actually spend more of your time actually teaching them about the Bitcoin and Lightning basics compared to now.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something we're kind of like preparing for now, like just doing some like education and stuff like that to anticipate those new entrants coming online. But I mean, we also have those today, so it's something that we're definitely looking at is how are we going to teach all of these people how to use Lightning and how to use Bitcoin, and how do we do it in a really good way. So that's just kind of a new thing that we're looking at that is additionally really interesting and fun to work on. Is okay, how do we educate these people on like how do you use Lightning, what's a channel, how do you use a node, all of this stuff.
Yeah, and so that's probably the biggest obvious one for many people when they first use Lightning. They don't understand that they can't receive yet until they've got incoming liquidity, and so that's probably the common one that you see. I see it when I'm talking to people. I guess actually that's probably a good point to bring up Flow. So do you want to tell us what is Flow? What's the deal with it?
Yeah, sure. So Flow is a easy way to buy channels for a node on the network, and it can be frankly any node. And so what we do is we leverage Lightning Labs' Pool product. And to give just a brief rundown on that, Pool is it's an auction service essentially on the Lightning Network where users can come together and people that have, say spare Bitcoin laying around that is just kind of sitting there, they can offer to lease it out in Lightning channels. And so new users or just users in general that need liquidity for their Lightning node are able to come to Pool and submit a bid to say, hey, I need liquidity. I'm willing to pay this much to get liquidity open to my node. And then the auction service in a non-custodial way matches up, the people, has them kind of do their agreements, and then the seller opens a channel to the buyer. So it's a open marketplace to buy and sell liquidity on the Lightning Network. It can be a little bit difficult to use from the buyer side because you have to create a Lightning Pool account, which requires you to lock up at least like 100,000 sats for maybe a few weeks, and then you also have to already have a channel established to open up that Pool account. So it's kind of really difficult for people that don't really know what they're doing or new entrants. So what we did is we created an API that essentially says, hey, you can use our Pool account. We'll manage all the things on the back end for you. And you just say how big of a channel you want, whether you want funds on your side or not, so you could have a dual funded channel. And then how much you're willing to pay if you want to set that, or you can just do an auto fee rate. And we will go and submit that order for you to the Pool marketplace, and then just give you a ticket back, which is called a sidecar ticket. And then you can just go to your node and claim that ticket with like Lightning Terminal or Pool or some of the products that are built into all of the Umbrel Start9s, all of those at-home node kits. So it's really a way to easily buy channels from anyone on the network. It's not through any centralized provider or service. You could get it open to just average users on the network. So it's a very easy way to buy channels both for yourself, but you could also use this as a way to buy channels for your users. So if you wanted to help your users get onboarded faster, you can still buy these sidecar tickets and give them out to your users so they get the channels to their node as well. So it's a really easy way to get channels from just people out on the network.
Gotcha. And so the important part as well is that it's not all like everyone just opens channels with the big well-known Lightning users. Let's say everyone just opens a channel with Async or Bitrefill or Bitfinex. It's more like the network is through this auction, you're getting your incoming liquidity from one of those other routing node operators, not necessarily one of the biggest ones.
That's an important point. And like with Pool, they have kind of a tiering system where you can have like kind of they have like their whole like boss score where it's there's like a higher tier and a lower tier, and you can choose kind of which tier you want. But with like the higher tier has a lot of like the big routing node operators on it that are just kind of out there in the network. So you can get matched with some really good nodes that aren't those really, really large popular ones. And for the sake of kind of you're very likely not going to have a good time connecting to those really big operators because everyone else is. You're just going to be fighting for, routes and all of this. Like, it's going to probably not be a very good choice to connect into these really big routing nodes. So this is a great way to decentralize the network more and being able to connect into ones that will likely give you better success probabilities when you're trying to make payments.
Yeah. And so a little bit of background for users and listeners out there. There is some risk even if you accept an incoming channel, because as an example, one of these big nodes might then have to think about the additional load on their own servers. They might have to think about things like the channel reserve, or they might have to think about this idea of, I might try to route through this user, but if that user is not going to be reliable, have good uptime, be good at routing through, then their own routing performance might get impacted as well. So it's sort of, there's all these reasons why some of the high tier routing nodes they don't want to open up too many channels to the less reliable nodes, because that might impact their own cost or their own, basically their own running costs, their own reliability, their own ability to route. So that's kind of an interesting, I guess, aspect that people who are new to the Lightning Network might not really grasp these elements of it. And another one actually would be, even if, let's say, you open channels up with users and there's a lot of small HTLCs going through, then you might not actually be able to claim that back on chain if something, let's say they later just go offline and they only routed very small payments through. You might have ended up paying all this on-chain fee for, like, in vain, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a large list of problems that you can experience doing things like that, or connecting to basically bad nodes on the network. And so that's where it's important to be connected to good nodes, and to also it's kind of like we said at the beginning, of being able to, if you're just trying to accept payments for your business or only do some small payments yourself, you probably don't want to connect into a lot of open up 20 really, really, really small channels. You'd probably have better reliability connecting to one or two really large nodes with a decent sized channel, and have more success like that, and you're less prone to having a lot of those things happen that you just mentioned.
I see, yeah. So in terms of that user, then the idea is they can spin up their node and use Flow or get a sidecar channel coming with inbound liquidity, meaning they can now receive funds and therefore sell their products or services on the Lightning Network. And so that makes it a bit easier for them. So in terms of achieving that, what's the current interface for that? Is that like API style, or is that dashboard? What does that look like right now?
Yeah, so right now it's API only, and we kind of launched it as a developer preview almost, of just API only, seeing how it works and just kind of work out a little bit of the kinks. But we'll have a UI, a dashboard coming really, really soon, probably by the end of the month, I would even say. So we'll have a front end coming soon where you can just kind of come to our website, enter in what size of channel you want. You can even add that you want some funds on your side, so you're able to instantly send payments as well. And then you can just pay for the channel, and then it's open to you. And so it makes onboarding really, really easy. And an important thing to note is that it's not only for voltage nodes. You can use this for any nodes on the network. You can, if you just got a brand new Umbrel in your house and you need to get some connectivity to it, you could use it for that too. So the possibilities are really pretty open, and the way that you want to use it to connect.
Yeah. So I'm also now thinking of the duration. So let's say that user uses Flow to get an incoming channel to them. How long is that? Can you just outline a little bit about the difference in the short duration and longer duration channel inbound liquidity? Could you just explain a little bit on that?
Yeah, so on Pool, they have right now they have a default lease duration of 2016 blocks, which is about 2 weeks. And so at the end of that you buy a channel for 2 weeks. At the end of that time, the other end can either choose to close it or not close it. It's really up to them. They could leave it open if it's a good enough channel or something like that. They might just leave it open. But then I think Lightning Labs is also coming out with a 2-month lease as well. So you could buy a channel for longer too if you needed it for longer. So there's only one duration right now, which is 2016 blocks, but there are more coming online soon, I think.
I see, yeah. And so the idea then is, as a merchant, you might have to then continually lease channels if you are continually operating your business to receive on the Lightning Network. So, but I mean, that all comes down to the conversation around fees as well, because I think it's also managing that expectation around what people think, because I think in the early days of Lightning, it was all, it's all one sat fee, it's all free, you don't have to worry about it. But now it's more like, no, people actually need to be aware there is a cost to run these things. There's a cost for the routing node operator, and in turn, they're obviously going to have to pass that on in terms of you, the end user, whether you are paying, in terms of like you're an end user just paying on the Lightning Network, paying some sats for the fees, or you're a merchant and you want to be able to receive sats. Well, there's some fees associated for that too. So I think that's going to be interesting, and just to see where the fees sort of level out at, let's say. Do you have any reflections or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's becoming maybe a little bit of a hotter topic here recently about like fees on the Lightning Network and stuff, which I find it really interesting. I think that a lot of people have really good points. I'm kind of like personally sitting in the middle, just listening to everyone's arguments, and one day I'll decide. But I think there's some people out there that think that you should pay for payment attempts too, whether it goes through or not. You should always pay for attempts, which prevents spamming of people just kind of probing channels and just trying to do either malicious or just trying to get insights or something like that, which I think has validity. I think that there could be an argument to be had for that. But then it's also like you said, there's people that are, none of this is free for anyone, so inherently charging a fee to route payments through your node I think makes a lot of sense. There's people that are on the zero fee bandwagon where they think that all fees should be zero. And I think that that gets hard because people, like I said, there's people this is a cost to everyone. Bandwidth, hardware, all of these things, cost money. So it's a very interesting paradigm that I think will work out over time. And I'm really interested to see how it goes. I'm kind of like just listening to everyone's arguments, and I think that one day there will be a pretty good solution to it. But I think what's like really great about the Lightning Network is that when we're talking about charging fees for failed payments or something like that, we're not talking like charging 5 cents for a failed payment. I mean, it's like a 1 millisatoshi. Like it could be so small that it is really it's really not a material cost, but it's enough to prevent spamming or something like that. So I think that that's something that people get really upset about is, well, I don't want to pay for a failed payment. Well, it's like you're not paying a nominal amount of money for it.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah, we'll get into some of that as well. I am curious as well whether you have any... do you have any ideas on where you see... I mean, we were talking about the fees aspect of it. Where would you say fees are right now in terms of... Would you say something like 0.2%, 0.3% is sort of, let's say, for the end user paying... let's say, as an example, paying $100 payment on the Lightning Network, do you think it's typically, it's fair to say they might be paying something like 20 cents on that, or do you have a rough feeling of where that is or sense of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have necessarily a hard feeling on that, and I honestly haven't paid much attention to like where fees are at now. I would say it's maybe even like maybe a little higher than like 20 cents on $100 or something like that. Again, it really depends on your route too. Like I said, there's some people that are doing zero fee routes where you might pay like nothing on that, where some people are charging higher fees, and that's what can be maybe a little bit unpredictable with the network. Is it just depends on your path and the fees that everyone sets on that path, whether it's really high or really low. So I think that that's kind of the state of the network. I would say right now is it's very sporadic, where some people have fees higher, some people have no fees at all, and it's all about. I think there's a lot of people that are interested in the Lightning Network right now about like the fees and the economics to the Lightning Network of watching your channel get drained from one side to the other and saying, hey, I can increase fees 10%, and then it'll I'll collect more money and then it'll drain slower. And trying that out for a week, and playing around with the fee rates and how fast your channels are getting drained or funds are moving around. So I think there's a lot of people that are interested in that are playing around with those kinds of economics that make the network a little bit sporadic in terms of fees right now. So it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, right. And if they're trying to really overly optimize, as listeners might recall from my earlier episode with Jestifer and Tony from Amboss, we were talking about that idea that some users are changing their fee rates extremely quickly, and then that can also cause some issues around the network.
I haven't listened to that episode yet. I need to do that, but that has caused some significant problems on the network because of the gossip layer. Like how, for those that aren't really familiar, the Lightning Network uses a gossip messaging protocol that basically whenever you update your fees or you create a new node or a new channel, it sends messages out to the greater network, and everyone kind of relays those messages about your updated status. Well, if you're updating your fees every 5 seconds or 10 seconds, that's a lot of messages on the network, and it essentially just spams the whole network to where no one really gets the important messages. They're getting just your stupid fee rate updates that no one cares about. So doing that is actually really problematic too, but I think that we learned that a few months ago that it could be really problematic, and I think some of the implementations added some safeguards to that as well, though.
I see. So maybe an example is they might rate limit the number of times that you change your fee rates, as an example, right? So maybe that's something. But I guess, and just the broader conversation around Lightning Network and where it's going, and perhaps security considerations, and some of these questions are starting to come up now as well. So as we were saying, there was that earlier concern you noted around spamming or jamming. So I think this is, if listeners, you want to search channel jamming. So there's this idea that and there's research and people talking about ways of potentially fixing these things by either doing things like rate limiting or having some kind of reputational system or various ideas like that. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you have any things that you think are likely as outcomes of these attempts to stop jamming, and therefore what that does to the network?
Yeah, I think that I guess it's one of those things that I don't really have hard feelings about either. I think that it's one where I'm kind of like staying in my lane of, you know, my knowledge, and I let those people that are like really into the channel jamming things, like Yoast and there's some other people that are like, you know, really trying to solve that problem really, really, you know, efficiently. So I kind of stand back and let them do it. But I think that it's one of those things that goes back to like the key send thing that where I was saying that I didn't like the Lightning Network because you couldn't send without an invoice. Well, this is another thing that's like, well, this doesn't sound great, but I have confidence that it's going to be solved one day where this isn't an issue anymore, and it's just a matter of time for people to find that solution. So I think it's one of those things that will get solved, and you know this will just be one of those things for the history books.
Yeah, I see. And I guess it is also starting to grow up as a network, and so it might also start to face some more security challenges or people trying to actually attack the network. I think maybe for the first few years of the Lightning Network's life, it's had training wheels effectively, and nobody's really been actively trying to attack it. Whereas in the earlier days, Bitcoin was just getting attacked all the time, and so I wonder, and this is something for all of us, right? Because you're building a business, you know, with a big component of the Lightning Network involved, and obviously I'm a Bitcoin and Lightning, you know, I'm a podcaster and I'm talking about it all the time. So we all have some skin in this game. But I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of, are there other security things out there hiding, or do you see that as a risk? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it's something more and more people are being aware of, and I think that people are kind of waking up to the fact that the Lightning Network to date has been on training wheels almost, where there hasn't been a serious, you know, kind of correlated attack on the Lightning Network to really try and do some serious harm. So I think that people are starting to kind of realize that, and I think that there's a lot of work on the implementations as well to work on that. So, like I think C Lightning has like remote signing where, you know, you can have a kind of a cold, it's not quite cold storage, but a siloed node that has your private keys, and you have like a more public facing node that can do more of the network, you know, communication. LND I think just added that too. So there's a lot more work being done on the security side to segment out, you know, some of the more sensitive things to better protect it. I think that we still do have a long way to go. Like I said, on our platform, we've added in a lot of security-centric features, specifically like restricting your APIs to only allowed IP addresses. There's a lot of really prominent nodes out there, I'll say, that have their APIs open to the world, which is like kind of security number one of don't do. So there's a lot of things that are still being worked on, I would say, as far as the network goes. But I think that people are starting to wake up that, hey, people are starting to put serious money on Lightning nodes as well. That makes them, a bigger attack vector, and then it also is just something that you really need to start watching out for if you're one of those people that are doing that. So I think people are really starting to wake up to the fact that this is becoming a much more serious thing. Especially like there's a government in Central America that is like using the Lightning Network now. It's like this is becoming real, and we need to take some serious precautions to make sure that this is secure.
Yeah, and as this network is being, in some sense, stress tested now by having a lot more businesses and users who are using it now. Obviously, I'm in El Salvador right now, and I haven't had the chance to go and spend with Lightning just yet, but I'm definitely going to. And so, of course, many users are using Chivo or custodial wallets, but of course those businesses are using providers like the likes of OpenNode or IBEX Mercado or the government Chivo provider or Strike or things like this. So everyone's having to see how the Lightning Network is actually going to work at scale now pretty soon. So with there'll be literally millions of users coming. So I think that's an interesting thing to see how the network handles this dramatic increase in users.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one. I think that's an important thing to note. Excuse me, about the state of the Lightning Network in like Central America and things like that. Is it's primarily custodial right now, which is fine. But it's like, imagine when these more and more people are starting to use it in a non-custodial way. Like I think it really it's going to alter the networks significantly. And for those custodial providers, I mean, it's your users that you're servicing is going up significantly, where we're assuming more people follow in El Salvador's footsteps. It's going to be significant number of users on this thing, and so it's also your job to make sure you're doing the right thing security wise too.
Yeah. And from let's say enterprise level or even just medium business size level, as people start to scale things up beyond just, let's say, the local corner shop sort of level of Lightning Network, then people will have to start thinking more seriously about things like backups, redundancy, and we're seeing things like various exchanges who might have a setup where they have like one node in front and another node behind, and they're doing more complicated setups. So is that something that you might have to explore as well from a voltage perspective if, let's say, you were to try and onboard a larger business who wants to take Lightning payment?
Yeah, for sure. That is always something that we're looking at and we're like adding into the platform. So the things like backups and the like I said, like security, like IP restrictions, things like that is all like native to the platform. So we handle all of that for our clients. And when we think about larger customers, we do kind of like a custom solution. So if you need that kind of like node in front with like a hidden node behind it kind of thing, we do all of those kinds of setups too. So we definitely do kind of create custom packages for those really large clients, and we're also keeping an eye out on all the implementations and their advancements with L&D is doing a lot with like some new databases and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on in that space. I think that again, given really the burst we've seen even in the last 6 months, that a lot of these implementations are looking at, okay, how are we going to run this in a very serious way outside of just some guy in his basement running a Lightning node. We're kind of getting into much more serious deployments, and so how are we going to service those people in a really efficient, really robust way? And that's what we do as well. As we kind of take, we were really very close with the implementations and watching what they're doing, and then we're able to surface up kind of best practices and recommendations to our clients based on that.
I see. Yeah, and so as you mentioned earlier, the current offering is LND only, the Lightning Labs implementation of Lightning Network. What else would you look at next? Like, would you be looking at C Lightning or Async or Rust Lightning sort of solutions? What sort of ideas are you looking at there?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at C Lightning next. We want to add it to the platform. We're kind of like just a small team, and it's just a matter of man hours right now. But we definitely do want to add C Lightning to the platform. Like Rust Lightning or LDK is a little bit more of a building block, so it's not quite a full node in itself. You kind of got to build it up, but really see Lightning would be the next one that we're looking to add to the platform.
I see, yeah. And also curious if you've got any thoughts. I think some people have been mentioning concerns, maybe not concerns is maybe a strong word, but some people have been mentioning perhaps payment reliability or perhaps channels being shut down on the Lightning Network, or lots of messages being passed along the Lightning Network. Has that come into any of what you've seen, or has that come across, has any of your customers come across that, or maybe you've just come across it in terms of online discussion about Lightning Network?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of one of the fun parts about our job is I think we get a lot of visibility into a lot of different kind of areas and happenings in the network. And so whenever there's always like someone on the network that's like, their node's like having problems and all of their channels got closed to a bunch of these different people, and so it's again kind of showing like the infancy of the network as well, where we're still kind of figuring out what's causing all these these little weird bugs and whatnot. So those things definitely do happen, and I think that we work with our clients as well as like the open source projects to try and surface those bugs and figure out the best ways to handle them. So those things definitely do happen, but I think that they're being worked on, and we're trying to make it so those kind of weird bugs are happening less and less, which again I think it's one of those things that will be solved. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. So looking out to Bitcoin or Lightning just generally, more broadly, do you have anything you're looking to see, whether that's at the protocol level or application-wise or maybe business-wise? What would you want to see out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we're working on, behind the scenes that we're really excited about, and there's I can't really go into detail on a lot of it, but really trying to create what we're trying to create is a full service platform that kind of has things to service Lightning users, just broadly, whether it's things with like channel management or running the nodes or observability or just getting up and running coding applications for it. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of things that need to be built around the greater network to help people just get up and running faster, and then also running in a really efficient way. When you think about people running applications outside of the cryptocurrency ecosystem at all, there's a lot of great tools you can be up and running like super fast. Even in like Ethereum, I'll say that I think that Ethereum has kind of had us like beat in like developer tooling and like getting these new developers on board and things like that. And so I think that there's a lot that we can do to help new people get on board, and then also kind of cater to the developers and getting people to start writing applications around the Lightning Network that has just like there just hasn't been great tools for yet. So that's something that we're working on, and I'm really excited about, is being able to usher in this new era of developers and this kind of next level Lightning deployments where, like we said, today it's kind of been a little bit of the early adopters, these people that are really into the network and really looking beyond that, and okay, how are we going to bring in new people, and how do we make this a more robust network that maybe isn't where it's at today, and just taking it to the next level.
Yeah, I see. And so as I read you then, and from talking to you, it seems to me like your main customers will be some developers who are looking to like spin up a lot of nodes for their Lightning businesses or Lightning products, and potentially merchants who want to take Lightning payment, and maybe let's say if you're living you're traveling around a lot and you need your Bitcoin node to be running as a VPS, because you can't obviously travel with that Bitcoin node. Well, then maybe that kind of user might be a typical customer as well. So is that right, or where else do you see your typical customers being? What kind of profiles do you see them as?
Yeah. We have a very, I think, wide kind of profile of customer, and that's kind of intentional with just how early the Lightning Network is. We want to provide good solutions for kind of everyone until while we're growing the network. So those like really kind of cheap entry level plans are great for people that are, like you said, that you don't have stable internet, you're moving around all the time or something, or you just want to try out Lightning. It's a great solution for them. And then it's also great for if you wanted to create like a donation page, or you have an event or something and you want to like accept Lightning payments, but you don't want to like dox your own personal Lightning node. You can spin up a node on our platform for a week for your event, accept your donations, close the channels, and be done with it. Just delete it entirely. So there's a lot of use cases for just the average user for our platform. And then you're right that we're working with a lot of people that are kind of creating lots of Lightning nodes as well. Like we work with Sphinx and Zion, the two kind of social media platforms that are built on Lightning. So we provision thousands of Lightning nodes for them. As well as people like we run nodes for like Amboss, so those people that are developing applications on top of the Lightning Network to do insights or usability. Thunder Games is a good example of enabling Bitcoin payments. So and then like we have some bigger customers that I'm not even probably allowed to name. So it's a very wide spectrum from just the individual that just needs a Lightning node all the way up to like the mission critical deployments that you don't want to run your business's shop on a Raspberry Pi in your home because that doesn't make any sense. So it's a very wide range of customers.
Yeah. One other question. So I guess slightly stepping away from the Lightning aspect just for a bit, let's say somebody wants to set up a Bitcoin node and do, I don't know, Electrum servers or other, like not necessarily Lightning, but just have a Bitcoin hosted node. So Bitcoin, Electrum server, maybe CoinJoin aspects as well, that they just want that as an always running node. Is that something you're exploring? Is that something you would offer as a service for people?
Yeah, we do. We do host like Bitcoin nodes, and we do a handful of them. So we do that, and if a customer needed something like Electrum server or whatever the services are, we can kind of work with them to make sure it's installed and running. So we do work with those kinds of things, and we are definitely able to provide kind of custom solutions depending on the person's needs.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, that I was just thinking that could also be like as another example. What if you had Uncle Jim node, right? And it's like an Electrum server, and you can spin that up, and then you can tell all your family and friends, oh hey, if you're a noob and you can't run your own thing, hey, here's mine, connect to mine. So maybe that's like a product idea.
Definitely.
But so I think that's those are probably the key points, and we're probably running up to time anyway. So Graham, where can people find you online, and if you've got any other final thoughts for listeners out there?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me online on Twitter. My handle's at GKRIZEK. And you can find Voltage at voltage.cloud. Sign up. We have a free trial node where you can just come, create a node for free for 10 days or 7 days. So come try it out and just check out the platform and see what you think. Happy to hear any and all feedback of whatever it is you're thinking, and be watching our space in the future. We're definitely coming out with a lot of new products, and we're working on a lot of really cool things that I think will help everyone on the Lightning Network. So yeah, stay tuned.
Fantastic. Thank you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you.